this cucumber is changing, and if you keep on pickling it, it's gonna turn into the smallest cucumber ever, or something. always changing. That's a terrible analogy. But,
so our first question for you was about your artistic influences. That I think one of the things that people are really receptive to in your art are all the different artistic movements that you reference to. So what about that historical tradition drives you within your work, and how do you keep finding inspiration in it?
wow, what a good question. What are my historical art influences? I would have to say that they begin from, I guess the first art movement that really hooked me was the Renaissance movement. Not that I make a lot of reference to those in my own art, but historically, that was a time when culturally, politically, and artistically, the world sort of opened up, and people were no longer painting for God but for man, and that was like this revolutionary thing. And so I always actually do go back to that movement, especially in Florence, because the Medici family were like big patrons and they gave people a lot of work. But I guess after that, it would go to the Impressionists, you know, Monet, Cassatt, Renoir. Those guys, again, sort of had their own Renaissance movement in Europe, in France. And again, we're almost breaking away from what the Renaissance movement had done, which was make work for man, but rich men. And the Impressionists got to make work for the heart of man, which was painting the sky violet and the woman's hair green. And it was more a personal art movement. And then coming down to I guess, you know, Matisse, Picasso, in the 1920s, and this era started, I guess, bringing art into a different breakdown, which I think we still have now, which is the artist is God. The artist makes work for himself, and that's the only thing that's important. And if anyone else wants it, cool. But I think for me, artistically, historically, I love going back and forth to all these different references. And if anyone sees these sort of pulls in my work, it makes sense. And I guess I like to make references to all the different movements that I've been inspired by, because I'm a big reader and listener, and like that.
I know you've been painting since you were little, and I guess we were wondering, do you remember having an early painting where you kind of just thought, oh my gosh, I have something here, like having an aha moment? And was there a specific piece that kind of changed your life trajectory, really, to becoming an artist?
Well, my first thought is no, because there's, and not to sound all like, I don't know, regal or something, there's never a piece that I'm like, damn, I really got that. Like, for me personally, it's always like, kind of close, get the hell out of the way, I'm gonna go over here. So like, it's always what haven't done yet in my head. And I guess that can sound pretty like snooty face, or I don't know, but it's true. But I guess the one time when I was 20, and I was mixing acrylic and oil, and I did all these different ways and it didn't work, and then it did work, and the varnish I used didn't cloud and go white all over the thing, and the painting was lost, and it still was there, and I was able to roll it and stretch it, and it was like I could kick it and it still stood up. So I guess that was probably one of the things where I was like, oh, this sort of technique works. But now I just have to paint the 100 other paintings that have been sitting in my head, which never got a chance to get out. Yeah. No, I think since I did start really young and making art, but I think there's this great divide between the inspiration of an artist and the ideas that they have, and then this, what are these manos a manos, like this little mortal coil that we have that's that you're like, body, just paint for 48 hours. You have to get this idea out. And the body's like, I have to eat and I have to sleep. And you're like, this is so frustrating. So I mean, that is always I think the more of the aha moment when you can, as an artist, is when you can actually get your idea across and still like have a life and be a person.
Has to be hard having that mental capacity and the physical capacity coming together and aligning at the same time. You have an idea, but you physically do what your brain is telling you to do. Right. That seems so hard. I mean, I am not an artist. I appreciate it so much because that has to be so difficult to get the idea to physically come out. I mean, it's amazing what happens.
It's so cute. Well, I think it's amazing that like doctors are like able to be like, I learned all this stuff and I'm going to physically save this person's life. To me, that's amazing. You know, like, but like on a very lower trajectory, yes, like it is a hard thing when you're like, wait a second, this painting feels like wood and I felt very passionately about it. Where the hell did you guys not meet up? Like cross, boop. That's why it's always like such a great joy when any artist will know that moment when they actually connect hammer to nail and it goes in there like, oh my god, okay, but then it's one piece and so you're like, next.
Has that always been the case for you, America, or do you find your relationship with that process changing as you mature as an artist?
Yeah, it has changed. I happen to be a very passionate person, very slightly dramatic, if you will, in the sense of not like, oh, the drama of me, but like when I do something, I do it. I don't have a middle ground. I either don't do anything or I do it to the 11th degree. So I think that the how do you say, like the process of making art and being an artist is getting definitely easier as I'm getting older, which is a real blessing. Because after a show, I'll come back in the studio and there'll be another show to work for and I'll be like, I don't even know how to paint. What am I gonna say? What am I gonna do? And then I will just sort of walk around and look at stuff and be like, oh, and I just start laying my hands on things and touching things and looking at brushes and admiring the colors. And then all of a sudden I go, oh, there's that one idea.
Yeah.
Little Marachi sticks.
Well, I think too, we always hear people say that your pieces bring them so much joy. So I was wondering, is that something that is very purposeful when you paint? Are you trying to be optimistic and positive? Because that's who you are as a person. You're really super positive, very beautiful, and it shows in your work. But I was wondering if there's that intent behind that always.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm drawn to work that moves me. And there's like music, literature, but I don't go and read the iconic detective files of the Florence Nightingale murders. Like that's just not something that brings me joy, or I want to spend my time doing. So I definitely am drawn towards the light. But I think that most people who are, unless they're like Pollyanna, like, wee, wee, like, I think those people are, well, I'll speak for myself. One who is just decided to be an optimist, decided to see the silver lining in 90% of the things. I think knows very well, or at least I know very well, the dark side of life, of the personal struggle that it takes to live a life, and the the like overwhelming forceful night riding off to go find that holy grail, which they shouldn't have done because it was rude. But those kind of things are like, you know, how dark the night can be, so you then dance even more brightly when the sun comes out. And that's very true for me. And so I do think that I'm moved in a way that alters my day by other artists who have grabbed a piece of that light. So that's something that I'm drawn to, and I want to do. And so, yeah, colors and things that are pleasing and break you away from the mundane of the day. I think that's sort of the duty of an artist, is to communicate those things when you can. And then if you're sad, then you go and take a hike.
I wanted to kind of bring in this new series too.
Yeah.
So this is different departure for you. This new series, I See Heroes Everywhere, and this is going to be part of our shows for the upcoming year. And these are all wonderful, wonderful pieces. I mean, Angela Davis, Cesar Chavez, Dolly Parton, so unique and different. So, I just thought maybe you could just take a couple minutes or a minute and kind of go over how this kind of happened.
Yeah. Sure. So I guess during this really interesting 2020 year, where we've had a lot of events that have challenged us, like the COVID and BLM. During this time, I sort of felt very hopeless, which is a really uncomfortable feeling. And during the beginning of COVID, I personally, there's this amazing New York cartoon I found in the New Yorker, and it's like this little image of a little black and white drawing, as they are, but it's a guy in a rowboat in a big sea, and there's like a big boat sinking in the back, and there's like a leak in his boat, and it's stormy, and it says, "Now would be a great time to finish that novel." And it's like referring to this COVID thing, where like people are like, "You have all this forced time, like go be so creative." And that's so great, and a lot of people have been able to do that. In the beginning, I personally felt like nothing, like, and I realized I'd come into the studio and I'm like, well, I have all this time to work, no shows, da 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 da. And I realized that I pull inspiration from being a part of this world, and the world doing well, and people are healthy, and yes, there's always struggles going on in the world, but feeling like this lockdown and feeling all this terrible ache for like people in large, I had nothing to make. I was like, what am I doing here? I need to be helping or doing something. And then that only escalated when the Black Lives Matters movement happened, where again I felt how like everyone was angry and upset and communicating it, and I didn't have anything to say because I didn't have a framework to come from, and I and so I started thinking, well, gosh, like there are people who have been in struggling times in the past, and like who said good stuff. Like I needed to cheer myself up, and so I started just you know doing research and reading and finding all of these amazing people who have said beautiful things during other times of struggle. And that's when I started wanting to draw their faces and wanting to read their works and listening to the things that are said and listening to speeches, and then picking ones that are very well known and some that aren't as well known. And I started to just feel a little bit more hopeful. And so that's sort of what these were about, was finding a way to remind myself. And I didn't even know really about sharing it. It was, such like a personal thing, but like, and hopefully sharing like how other people, I mean, I mean, Harriet Tubman, like, I mean, you know, like a life of complete hopelessness. And yet she talked about looking at the stars. I mean, it makes me cry to even think about it, you know? So like, that was something that I felt that helped me. And so I just wanted to share it. And then when I spoke to JoAnne about it, she got excited. And as JoAnne always is such a champion for her artists and giving them a platform to express themselves. So that was like a really lovely thing.
Yeah. Well, they're really amazing, and what's been so great is the response. People are just they're loving the, you know, again, for me, you know, we've worked together for a long time now, but it's always about the lines, and you know, again, that's, you know, it's coming forward with these images. You can just feel the sense of each of these, you know, and I was really excited about the pieces. People that are collecting them are excited about the works, and then we're doing the donation to the ACLU and the NAACP, so that makes me feel good, and they're really, really wonderful works. So I'm looking forward to getting them framed up for the exhibition and showing them in Laguna and in New York. And I think that, you know, I think you always come up with something special every year. Everything's special, but then you always do something a little bit unique and different, and that's what excites us. And I think it's been, I don't know how many years now that we've been doing this, but, you know, I can't wait to see what you're going to do.
That's so kind. Well, thank you. Well, that's the hope, always with an artist. I remember when I went and saw Bob Dylan play for the first time, and I've been such a Bob Dylan fan since I was like 12. And I went and I was like, what? He's singing the song I know, but it doesn't sound anything like the song. And I was like, what a jip. And at the exact same moment, I went, oh, he's a genius. Like, he can't do the same thing every time. He is actually such an artist that he will sing that song again because he got paid to sing it, but it's gonna be different. And I just relish that little pickled juice feeling of like, this cucumber is changing, and if you keep on pickling it, it's gonna turn into the smallest cucumber ever or something. always changing. That's a terrible analogy. But
so we can't wait to see what your pickle's gonna look like.
Exactly. That's what I was going for. Thanks for picking it up.
Really excited, and this is really fun for us to kind of, you know, like you said, the last several months have been unique and different, and we are finding silver linings in every, you know, aspect and bit, and looking forward to a bright 2021. And
yeah. Well, I want to thank you three beautiful women, because this has been a struggle personally for your own lives, and yet you guys maintain this plateau, this area for all the artists that you have, and giving them that security and the fortitude of you guys believing like, okay guys, we can do this, what else you got, come on. And like, you guys have no idea what that means to your artists that you guys bring shelter to. So thank you so much, because it's a balancing act that you guys do. And us artists, we're just like, oh, we feel things, JoAnne. And you're like, come on, we got it. And you're like, oh, okay, all right. So you guys are amazing. Thank you very much, all three of you, for doing this for the years, but also this crazy year. Yeah. And I'm, how do you say, spiritually reaching out and holding all your three hands and going, really great 2021.
Yeah.
Wahoo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
have a really great day.
Okay, love you guys. Okay, sorry.
Bye.
Okay, zoom out.
Zoom out.
Zoom out, baby.